Hey, what's up? Welcome back. I'm currently screening from a different location than usual, and so you might hear that barking dog in the back. It's just gonna be how we do it today. I was actually a few minutes late because he's just barking at someone out front. I was waiting for him to stop. So if you hear it, don't mind it. Um, I skipped on Friday, so it's been a few days, but I've got a few things lined up. I ran into some snags on Wednesday, last time I live streamed, if you remember. So between then and now, I figured out a few things, what's going on. I didn't actually make any changes. The document you're seeing here is the current state it was left in. Reverted everything I tested, but I know what's going on. So I'm going to talk through a few things. I'm going to get the categories to pop in. I'm going to fix the responsive on the cards because at small size, they're pushing off screen. And the font. The font's the last one. I just actually made a really dumb mistake when I did that originally. So yeah, let's get started. I'll start on the font, I think, actually. And then I'll go through. So I'll add the custom font and then I'll go through and update the styles so that everything is using the new fonts. It's actually two of them. So that should be cool. For a little catch up, the way I did it last time. So to import a Google font, which is what I'm doing, you can import any font or you can even upload a font from your computer. But in the design library, there's these tabs, and one of them here is fonts. And in the fonts tab, you paste the URL from Google and type some things. And I had actually just typed the font name wrong, just like a total. It was actually an old code HTML thing where I put a dash in between the name instead of a space. But anyway, when I remove the dash, everything works. So I'm going to do it again from scratch and show off how the custom fonts work. So again, it's under the design library tab or section, and then the fonts tab. And by default, there's a font in here called Cabin, which is a Google font, and you can see it displayed right here. And the additional fonts we add are all going to display in that same way and show you what the font is. You can change the text if you want to see a nicer preview. But that's all details. For now, I'm going to grab... So normally... I think it's like fonts.google or something. Normally, you would go here, find a font you want, select the weights you want, that kind of thing. And then they give you the option to link to the font, and there's a link here. Or to import, and there's, I believe, the same link here. But that link is what we use. That URL is what we use. And so in no code list, because I already have it built from before, I'm trying to find the project. There we go. Since I already have it built from before, this is the main SAS style sheet. I have the URL here, and so I can just copy it from here. Sorry about that. My computer can't copy, I guess. There we go. So what this says right here in this link, it's Google Fonts, it's getting Open Sans 400 weight, which is regular, 600 weight, which is actually like semi-bold, 700 is bold, 400 italic, and 600 italic. So in Open Sans, I'm getting the regular and italic of the regular width or weight and the semi-bold weight. And then I'm also getting Roboto, regular and bold weight, which is for the heading, so I assume that's why I'm not grabbing the italic. Thing about fonts, little side note, not builder specific, is that when you load in fonts like this, the more you load in, the longer your page is going to take to load. So you want to kind of, if possible, limit it to the ones that are actually being used. So we don't need this. This is where I would grab our link, but instead, since I already have the link, I'm going to come into this fonts tab, add a new font. So here's the font URL. And what I'm going to do, since I'm adding two fonts, I'm going to do this twice. So this first one, I'll do Open Sans. The next one, I'll do Roboto. So what I can do is I can say Open Sans, and the font family is Open Sans. And the fallback, you don't even have to technically fill this out, but essentially if it can't load Open Sans, what font will it fall back to? And I'm just going to do an HTML thing called sans serif like that, which is basically I guess it's their system default sans serif, which would mean it's more similar to Open Sans than like Times New Roman, which has serifs. So it's with serifs, not without sans serif. So anyway, that's how I do that. And when I did it last time, I actually wrote the font family like this, which I think is just my old coding patterns, but you do not need to do that. And the way that I found that, actually, let me pull fonts.google up again. Oh, sorry. The way I know that value is that when I select, so say I was doing Roboto and I select the style, I can see right here, it says Roboto. And actually, I should really do one with a space in it. So here's Open Sans. So you can see here, this is how I write Open Sans, not with a dash. And this is how I write Roboto. So doing that back here, and I create font, we'll pop it in. And you can see this font is different than this font because this is displaying Open Sans. And then what I can do is I can add that same URL. And I could split these up. And I don't know, actually, I should look this up. I'll tell you next time. But I don't think this is going to cause any extra load time because Builder on the back end is pretty smart with, you know, if it already has this stuff in here, it can use the same one. Like, I don't think it's going to try to load all these twice or anything. But just double check. I will run some tests. But this is Roboto. And, you know, I could also, to be more precise, copy it like this. And the sans serif or the fallback for Roboto, I'll just also do sans serif for now. I think that's probably what it would be. And you can see Roboto is in there too now. So now I'm all set. Now that I have these fonts in my project, I can use them wherever I want. And so in no code list specifically, this is like the way I build. And I mean, it's the way I'd recommend building, but I don't want to dictate how you build. So you can do whatever you want. But I'm going to set the fonts at the most base level possible. So I'm going to set a body. I have a body class on like the main page for this website. I'm going to set the Open Sans font there so that any text is going to default to Open Sans. And then Roboto is probably the headings. So I'm going to check that. And if I confirm it is, then I'm going to set sort of like a base headings class as Roboto. And then I'm going to remove. So what Builder has by default is it has base classes for different things like p tags, headings, that kind of thing. And they have a default class, and that class specifies the cabin font, the default font we saw, and it specifies the font size in pixels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of those base classes and remove all that. And in the future, they might not come with the elements. It's something we talk about sometimes. I don't know. You know, it really, it probably comes down to what, you know, taking a more of an overall look how everyone builds and forming a good solution. But if it were up to me, I wouldn't have those fonts on there. And so I remove them each project. I set the font family and the font size on the body class. And then I mentioned this before, but I set all other font sizes in M's or Rems. And what that allows me to do is to make responsive easier to build. When I scroll down, or when the screen size shrinks down to a certain size, whatever pixel size I want, I specify, I switch that base font size. And by switching the base font size, it will, sorry, I got distracted. Let me turn my notifications off. By switching the base font size, it will, because everything else is proportional to it with the M's and Rems, it will update the whole site at once instead of going to each element and doing responsive font sizes, which you can override with anyway if you need to be precise. But doing a blanket from the body class will take care of like 95% of your responsive. So anyway, I have on this, this is our main page here, home. I have a body class on here, which is in here, and it's called body class no code list. And on the body class, I've already specified a font size, and I started to specify a font family, but it didn't work last time, and that's why I abandoned it, because I had that dash. So now I'll set this correctly, and since I added those fonts, they appear in this menu. So you can see Open Sans is here and Roboto is here. So now I'll set the default base font is Open Sans, and I can see it already changed in this menu. The menu, I think, is the only thing that is set. So you can see right here, this is the old version. It's defaulting to like the browser default font, which is probably Times New Roman by the looks of it. So if I refresh, now it can load that other font in. And the base font will be right there, Open Sans. Now, everything else, it's kind of hard to tell actually on this page because their fonts are so similar. But everything else that we're seeing right now is actually Cabin, the default font. Most likely anyway, unless I just forgot and I already removed them. But like this heading here has a class on it that specifies Cabin. So what I need to do now is remove it on the headings, remove it on the P tags, you know, wherever else. Inputs probably have it, I'm not sure. But the first thing I can do is go into a heading. And it's got a class of heading on it. So if I look at this class, here's the Cabin font. There's some margin stuff set, and there's a color set. And the color here, this little extra, well, I don't know if you can tell it's extra actually, if you're not in here all the time, but there is this little theme icon and this extra gray box because this color is actually using themes. So right here, I'm not going to go through this right now, but just wanted to mention there are themes built into Builder. You can add as many as you want, but it comes with dark mode and light mode. So that's what that is for. But looking at these, I'm going to actually remove all this stuff, I think. And the reason is I'm copying an existing design, right? So if I look at this heading, I bet it doesn't have margin of, you know, only 10 pixel on the bottom. And so that's the only one I really need. It has 1 M on the bottom. So it's close, but you know, it's not the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new class for the headings. The reason I do this is kind of quirky right now, and it will not be a reason in the future, I think. But right now, since this heading class is a default Builder one, if I make changes to it and then I update that class from the toolkit later, so as new Builder updates come out periodically, a little button pops up here if you can update anything. So whether that's styles, actions, elements, they're all broken down separately. So if that button came up and I clicked it and I said update the default heading class, it might override some of the stuff I changed. So in order to avoid that, I just create a new one. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to remove that class, and you can see now it's got nothing on it. But I'm going to add a new class. Let me double check that I didn't create anything yet. Nope. In this case, I'm just going to call it heading no code list. You can call it literally anything. And that starts blank. So I know the styles here that I want. And actually, like, they're a little crazy even. Like, see, this font size is 1.71428574143M. I assume that I got that by doing a little trick where if I have a font size, maybe I can even figure out what that is. So my base default font size on the body class is 15 pixels, if you remember. And so 1M would make it 15 pixels. 1M is it's not the same technically, but it's almost the same as saying 100%. So it's like the same size. And 2M would be twice as big, right? That kind of thing. But if I don't know, so say I know my base size is 15 pixels, but I want my headings to be 17 pixels. How do I figure out the 17? How do I figure out how many M's that is? And the way you do it is you can actually divide, it would be 17 divided by 15. I didn't write the slash in there. Let me see, I can maybe do it like this. So 17 divided by 15. And you can see that it equals 1.33333. So if the font size I was looking for is 18, that'd be 1.2. If it was 19, if it was 20. And I'm just doing this for demonstration. I really just need to, wait, did I do that? Oh, 1.33. I really just need to paste that value in. But I'm getting closer, and the value I was looking for is 1.71, so it's actually much bigger than I had it. So I don't know if that would be like, probably not that big. Oh, so yeah, it looks like somewhere around like 26 pixels is what it would be. It doesn't matter, it's just a way to convert those back and forth. So you can divide the target size, the size you want, divided by the base size, and the answer, whatever it gives you, it'll say like 1.1 or 0.078 or whatever it is. That's how many M you want. I'll just copy and paste in this case. So 1.71, etc. So that puts it at about that size. And then there's a few other properties on here too. So I can see there's a color. I am setting it to Roboto. Font weight of 700 and a line height and a margin. So I don't know if this font size will translate exactly, but we'll see. I'm going to copy all of these. And then I'm going to come into this class I was on, go into the CSS, paste them. And you don't need to remove these tabs or spaces, but I do. This should probably be 1.75M. I mean 1.5. All right, so it looks like that more or less worked, but I'm going to check the used properties and make sure that font translated over because I'm not sure if it would, but I'll just reselect it in case. So now I've got that, so that's great. And then I can look at it here and make sure that it's somewhere in the ballpark of what we're looking for. And so that's what I've been changing. That's the new version. It actually looks a little smaller, although let me move that in case it's a responsive thing. Could be a little smaller, could be the same size. I can't quite tell. But it's close, so that's cool. And then another nuance that I thought of while I was doing this is actually I'm setting this class called heading no code list. And I first set the font size there, but actually I don't want the font size on this base class because I want this base class to apply to H1, H2, H3, H4, etc. Any heading. So I'll remove that font size from the base heading class, and then I'll add a utility class for whatever heading it at, whatever H1, H2 it is. So in this case, if I inspect it, I can see this is an H2. And so the first thing I'll do is I'll come into properties and make sure this is an H2, which it is. So this is a heading element, but you can actually select which level of heading you want. And then, whoops, I'm going to create a utility class. And since I called this one heading no code list, I'll just call this heading dash H2 no code list. And then I'm going to move that font size that I put on here, copy it, pop it on here. And then remove it from here. Okay, so now I have that mostly set up. I mean, I'm sure there's a few other things I'm going to need to add to that, but that's generally there. But you can see it's different from this categories heading. These two look different. And that's just because I haven't updated the classes. That's where the magic of classes come in. If you don't already code or if you don't know CSS, because I've set classes, because I set all the properties, the styles for this in classes, I can now come into here, put the default primary class on there, and then add this H2 utility class. And now they're the same. And not only are they the same visually here now, but if I update that class, they both change. So that's pretty good there. I'm not going to do this highlight just yet. That's like an extra class inside. It's pretty simple, but I'm just going to skip that for now. And I'm not going to probably style this menu yet. Like these are bold, whereas on mine they're not, but I'll do that in a second. But I think for now, font-wise, oh, you know what I'll do? I'll change a few fonts in these cards, but I won't fully style the cards. I'm just going to take care of the defaults. So I know there's P's in here. This is some kind of a header, so I'll clean these up really quickly. So for those, you know, these cards are listed here in this list of cards element, but they're actually pulling from this single page. So all I have to do is update this single page, and then everything else, each card will update. So I started here on this heading, software name, and it's purple because it has a binding. But it's got the defaults here again, heading, which I can change to heading no code list. And then I don't know exactly what level of H of header this is yet. So let's check what I did on the live site. Also in H2 it looks like, which is easy because we already have that made. So I'll apply this here, and then let me just make sure, yep, that's already an H2. Okay. And then next I'll go into this description here. And this description has a default paragraph style, and it's almost the same thing. There's no margin on this one, but it's setting a font, it's setting a size, setting a color. I don't want that. So I'm going to come in here, remove that, add a new one. And now it's good to note, like I'm doing it with these new classes because I'm like avoiding basically a problem that I haven't run into yet, which is a slippery slope. If you do it this way, then you have to do what I'm doing now and replace each, like I have to replace every P with this new class. In the future, like as I'm building now, when I insert a P, I'll just change it there, or I'll copy paste what's on the screen already. But it's a little more tedious than if I would have just edited the properties on this paragraph tag. If you edit the properties on this paragraph tag, everything you've already put on the page has it automatically, like it originally had it when you brought it in. So everything would update. So this is a little more tedious, and I'm doing it for a sort of strange reason, but I wanted to mention because it's exactly what I do. And in the future, if the default class doesn't include a font or a font size, I wouldn't do this. I would just leave it on there and then add new classes. But and actually, to that point, sometimes I keep the primary class, and I add a utility class called overwrites, and I'll just say font size inherit, which inherit means like ignore what it's set to and take its parent. Font family inherit, that kind of thing. But this project, I did it this way. So in this case, there's no distinction on paragraph tags. They're all P. There's, heading tags have H1, H2, H3, and they're all different sizes. Paragraph is just a paragraph, so I don't need to add anything else. It's pretty much just this, and I need to add in the actual properties. So, okay, so here's something too that I realized. I did this before where I set the font family on the headings to Roboto, and I set the color. But I actually didn't need to set the color because I also have the color on the main body class right here. So in this heading class, I have the color set because I copied and pasted, but actually I don't need it here, and I'm going to remove it. And the reason why is because I'm not explicitly saying my headings are a different color than the rest of my text. I'm saying use the base color. So since I have that base color set on the body tag, on the body style, I just want to use whatever it is for the headings. And that way, if I want to change this to purple in the future, change it just on the body and it updates everywhere. So for these paragraphs, I don't even need to add in anything for color because it's going to be the default. And on the headings, I changed the font to Roboto because the headings are Roboto, but for the paragraphs, I want them to be the default. I want them to be Open Sans, which is set on the base, on the body style. So in this case, I really don't have to do anything, right? I can leave everything the base, it's coming from the base. And that tends to happen with paragraph because when I set my base font size, I'm thinking paragraph, which is like normal text. Most of the text on the page is a paragraph. So I probably won't even have to change my font size, but that's the one thing I'll check is that in here, this P has font is inherit. I'm not seeing any font size yet, so I'm guessing it's just going to inherit it. But I can look down, and eventually I should see something for the font, even if it inherits it from the body. Here it's over. Oh, that's a media query. The other thing that's confusing is I'm doing this on this small screen, so when I pull this inspector in, you can see it's already using a media query. So it might be using a smaller text size. I don't actually need to find it. It's in there somewhere, but I know for a fact that that's going to be the base size. So I'm just not going to mess with it until we get to responsive, in which case I'll show you how to make that font smaller using the base, the page style. So yeah, keep that for now. And then I'm just going to go in here and change the remaining elements. So I don't know if we can, you can notice it if you look closely, but that font in size is different than that font in size. So even though these aren't real yet, I know they're all going to stay somewhat as text elements. So I can just reselect this for each of them. And then these categories, I might not mess with now, but they come from another page. They're going to be styled differently. They get smaller and gray. But I know that they're probably some sort of a p tag. Well, they're a text box tag, a text box element. In this case, they're a span. But this text box element, like everything else, it's got a font size, a color, and some margin all set. So let's just remove that. And the same thing, I'll just call it text box no code list. Not super creative, but efficient. And I'll be able to find it later. Okay, so that's that. The only other thing on here is an image, and an image also has a default class on it, default styles. But in this case, when I look at these, I can keep them. I mean, I don't know, you don't need these necessarily, and if your application is different, maybe you won't want these. But this object fit, object position, they're like rarely used, and just make it a little more like you'd expect. And then this has a filter of invert 0% because it's in light mode. And actually, if this were in dark mode, nothing really has changed. I don't have this all set up, but you can see the images get inverted. So this logo that used to be black is now white because of this. Invert 100% when you're in dark mode. I'm not using that now. Like I'm not going to use dark mode and light mode on this site, but that's what that filter is. I don't need to touch it. So I'll just leave that image class on there. Okay. And so now I think this is up to date anyway, but I'll just refresh this. You can see it looks pretty close, but I can also tell like this font on the title of the software is a little bigger in my version. So I probably have, and actually all the text is, so I probably have a class or a style on the card itself that says something like font size 0.8 em, which is like somewhat like 80% font size. So it's like the body is setting a pixel, the card shrinks it, then depending on what's inside the card, the H1s, H2s, the P tags, they might shrink or grow it even more. But everything's proportional. So that's kind of how this is all playing out. But I'll go into these cards. I'm going to style these cards to look like these cards in a second, or if I have time today. So I'll do the sizing when I go into there. For now, I think I'll consider that base level of like getting the font in there, getting some sizing. I'll consider that done. And what I'll do is as things come up, I might notice a font's off or a size off. I'll switch it and correct it when the time comes. So I think now I'm going to go into the next step, which is populating these categories as filters. So it's just these. And then we can do a little styling on them. Earlier, I set up a new action, which is coming from the Airtable pattern I built. So it's kind of a special builder action that you would import into your project. And I set it all up and I live tested it, and then no categories showed up. And I didn't know why. I actually even went in and did some more advanced than usual debugging, and it was confusing. I couldn't figure out. So this morning I did some tests in a test project, and I realized why they weren't showing up. I don't know. This might actually be a bug. It's not something I noticed before, so it was kind of confusing, but I just had one little setting wrong. So right now I'm just going to go update that setting, explain what it is, and then we'll keep going. So this list of rows categories is one list of rows, which has a page here for each category. And then this is a list of cards that has a page here for each row of Airtable data. So the first step is I'm importing this Airtable data. And then after this is imported, I'm going to use another action to populate this list by looking into each of these cards, finding the unique categories, eliminating duplicates, sorting them alphabetically, and then listing them. And once I do that, once I have them listed in this setup where I've got a list of rows and a page here, then the filtering and the visuals of hovering over all that stuff, that's all separate. The data's in place. I'm just going to do it. So this step is just to get that list of filters in place. It's not going to actually be related or do anything yet, but it'll be listed there. So what I did was on this main page, when the page loads, it runs an action for get Airtable data and set into element. And so that's what calls out to Airtable using my API key and stuff like that. And this is all, if you want to learn this, or if you haven't seen this is all done, I think in the second session, although maybe the third, I'm pretty sure it's the second session is where I set all this up. But really, it's just an action where I specify my Airtable API key, the base that I want to pull data from, and the table name. And in this case, I talked about this before, I'll just touch quickly, but there's a limit from Airtable. When you pull data, they'll only give you 100 records, no matter what. But if your actual Airtable base has more than 100 records, it'll also return a unique value, which is like the next page of records value. And so you get 100 records, and if you receive that value, you know there's more records, you do that same call again, but you send that value back. That's kind of how they handle it. And it's a way to limit their API so that people aren't just crushing their servers. But it creates some roadblocks if you're implementing the Airtable API yourself or in any custom way. So what I did in Builder to handle that is I have kind of a loop set up where it gets the Airtable data here. And like I said, it's only going to get 100 records by default. But there's this page offset variable that I specify. So I just choose a name. That's how it works. And then I run a condition and I say if that page offset variable doesn't equal nothing, so it's saying if it's not blank, if anything is set for that offset variable, then run this action, get Airtable data. And that's the action we're in. So I created a loop. So if that condition runs and there is that variable present, if it's set, it runs the action again. And this time it'll get the next 100 records, because this time it's actually sending, where is it in here? Variable with offset. It's actually sending that offset variable into the call. And you don't actually have to know how any of that works. That's under the advanced options anyway, but that's all built into the action, and those defaults are set in there. So it'll just work out of the box like this. And if it comes to the last page of records, so no code list has almost 300 records. So it'll get 100, return the variable, query again, get 100, return the variable, query again, get like 96 because it's close to 300, however many there are left. And then that variable will not be present. It'll be blank. So when this condition runs, it'll say if this current page's variable doesn't equal blank, but it will equal blank, so we're going to do the false action. And the false action is create categories. So all that is to say I'm just looping through, populating all of the Airtable data. And when I get to the end, I run the action here, create categories, which will populate the categories. And the create categories action is, like I said, a custom one that I built from Airtable. So if you imported the Airtable pattern into your project, you just get this action. You can just use it. And all you need to do is pop it onto the page here, choose the list of elements. So you have a list of cards or a list of rows that you can set data into. You choose that list where the Airtable data is. You choose the Airtable field that you want to make, that you want to find as the categories. And then you choose the list that you want to import, that you want to set those category names into. So I'm looking through this list of cards. I'm looking for the field categories, which is websites, blockchain, data and databases is one, integrations is a different one. I'm looking for those, and then I'm populating this categories list. That's all correct, basically. Like I would think this is how you set it up, but last time I tried this and it didn't work. And the reason was a little strange is because this here, so I'm selecting the current page list of cards main software list, which is this element. And this element has the Airtable data set into it. Normally, if I pull value, it gives me like a JSON representation of that Airtable data. Or if you're using Builder data, a JSON representation of Builder, because it's all JSON in the background. But for whatever reason, value didn't work. But you can choose these other things. And I think like for an average Builder user, I mean, 99 times out of 100, you're using value. I don't know. It's like very rare that you need to switch, but these things are here because Builder wants you to be able to do anything. And sometimes you do want to do something crazy where you might want actual element structure or HTML node of that element to do something with JavaScript. I mean, you can go really far, but in this case, I actually just need to select data instead of value, which I found by trial and error. I debugged and realized nothing was coming out of here when I had value. So I said, how do I fix that? Change it to data, and in the debug, I noticed data was coming out. So for whatever reason, I set that to data, and I'm gonna look through the documentation and check my original demo for this and figure out, if it needs to be data, I'll make some notes so people know what to do, or fix it so it's value. But in this case, to keep moving with this live stream and keep moving with this project, I'm just going to leave it at data because that does work. And data is just bringing out the raw HTML. So value means different things for different elements. And so for whatever reason, it just wasn't the right thing in this case. But now that I set this to data, if I go to this page, first it's going to load in all of the Airtable stuff. And then as you can see, it popped in those patterns. And so, I'm sorry, those categories. And so these are listed, and you can see there's a few, there's like 40 some categories, but these are listed and they're not duplicated and they're in alphabetical order. And the reason I wanted to note that is because if you have, this is just coming from Airtable like this, right? This is my Airtable base for no code list. And so I just have a field here called categories that's open-ended. So there's, I forget, yeah, edit this. So there's this many categories, you know, possible. And they're set to like one or multiple values per software, and many software can be set to the same value. So there's a lot going on, but there's no way in Airtable, well, I could query the same thing I query to get all the data, but specify only give me the categories. But even doing that, it would still give me duplicates. It would still give me, it would be in a different format. So what this action actually does is it takes care of all the logic to make a multi-select field from Airtable into filterable categories. And the reason I set up that action is because it's such a common scenario. So if you have a really nice Airtable list of anything, and then you say, I want to make this into a website people can use, first, you can open up Builder and import the Airtable pattern. So like, boom, boom, you're done. That's like a really fast way to build these kind of sites up. But the second thing is you want people to filter almost all the time. Like there's almost never a case, unless you have a very little amount of data or it's pre-filtered in some other way, there's almost never a case where you're just going to list it. You know, you want people to be able to search or filter or whatever. So that's why I have this, and it kind of takes care of that. And in no code list case, it's all I need. Maybe in a different project, there might be multiple different columns you can use as filters and you have to set something up. This is just this. So it's super easy. It's now done. And the only thing left here, well, I shouldn't say the only thing. There's a lot of things left, like all the hover states and actions to here. But I see one quick thing is that there's a lot of space in between these, whereas on the actual no code list, there's not much. So I can just take care of that really quickly. So in here, if I inspect on this, so this is like most things in HTML. This is an unordered list, a UL, and each list item is an LI inside. So you can see what it's highlighting on the left as I scroll down. It's highlighting each LI. And then inside of each LI is just text. And in this case, I have a before pseudo state or pseudo selector in there. So it looks like the LI is what has the styles on it. I'm going to do this a little differently in Builder's case because the list of rows is using an LI, but I'm not going to style directly on that LI. I'm going to style on the elements inside. So in this case, it looks like I'm doing a few things. I'm doing cursor pointer, which is what gives it that hand instead of the text cursor. No padding, position relative, setting the width. And it looks like, okay, and here's margin 0, which is just inheriting from something else. Whereas on this one, I'm pretty sure it's going to have margin at least. And I already set that cursor pointer. Oh, so I already copied some of the original styles here. And then the only thing it doesn't have probably is it doesn't have margin reset, because these are coming in as P's, I think. So if I check this page here, yeah, so that's a P tag. P tags by default have margin on them. In this case, I have only this primary style, primary class with no margin and nothing else. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add, so this class is called category row. So I know it's only for these category rows. So right on this base class here, I'm just going to be like margin and then 0. You can see it already fixed it. So that's looking pretty nice. It's a little big still. Actually, all the fonts to me look a little big. So maybe that base isn't right or something, but That's pretty good. We've got that all piped in. And that's all real Airtable data. This is all pulling live from the same Airtable base. So pretty cool. Oh, I see. And actually, the font wasn't even bigger, but because I had the inspect window open, the actual viewable browser width was thinner, and it was applying a media query. It was applying some responsive design. So these are much closer. Not exact. You can see things are shifting around, but I'm getting there. And so, okay, so that's fonts I wanted to go over today. I wanted to pop those categories in. And then the last thing I wanted to cover was another bug that I ran into where as I was shifting the screen down, the cards here were pushing off screen, which I don't want. Like if your laptop is only this wide, like ignore the inspector. If your laptop was only this wide, you know, you wouldn't want that cut off. You wouldn't want to have to scroll sideways. Or actually, this might be a better way to display it. And I don't even have, so you can see it doesn't do any responsive here because I don't have the page headers even in yet. So I looked into that because on I guess the last live stream or one of the live streams, I couldn't figure out why that was pushing out, and it was really confusing because usually you can see something has a hard-coded width, or you know, there's usually a reason. It turns out what was actually happening is the images had a width of 2M, which is really small. The gaps have a 2M width, and then depending on how long a single word is in the title, the card was taking the width of that shortest single word basically. And the reason is because text will wrap with word breaks. So I don't know if I can even show an example. I mean, you can see an example here, 8B website, and then builder goes to the next line. That's because it wrapped at the space. But if this was one long word, maybe I can even show you. This is one long word with no spaces. Then it's not going to wrap. You can set a CSS property actually to make it wrap. But if you don't have that property set, the default is it's not going to break a word and wrap. So that's why some of these cards were pushing really wide. It's not even anything to do with like an explicit width or whatever. And if you combine that with the fact that I didn't do any responsive, all that's happening is that it's saying 100% has to be 3 cards across, because that's what I specified when I was making these cards here. I've got them as display grid, and I've got this template, 1 fractional width, 1 fractional width, 1 fractional width, which is essentially saying 33%, 33%, 33%, you know, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And because I have that, because it's CSS grid, it will never wrap, you know? So if I had it 2 side by side like this, it's going to always put 2. If I have it 3, it's going to always put 3. And so 2 side by side probably fits here. So you can see it already popped it in. So that looks pretty good. And what it means is that I just have to do responsive design for this. It just means when the screen size gets to whatever, you know, this is 1151 right here, or it's probably gonna be a little bigger than that. I just have to make the changes to be 2 per row instead of 3 per row. And that's different from Flexbox. Flexbox, which I can do here, instead of display grid, display flex, and then there's some different properties. Flexbox, I forget what the default, I think the default is not to wrap, could be wrong, but either way, you can set flex wrap to no wrap. In which case I could keep, if I had this flex box and I had these each 33% and the window got shorter, it would wrap the next one to the bottom. Grid does not do that though. Grid is a grid. So I want to keep it grid. I love grid. And instead of doing anything crazy, I'm just going to set up some responsive on these cards, and it's going to fix that width problem, and we're never going to have a horizontal scroll bar. So first thing I'll do, I did while we were talking actually, is I set the default back to being 1 fractional width, 1 fractional width, 1 fractional. I think that means fractional width. I don't actually know. But what it is, it's like the remaining open space will divide based on these. So if I wanted the center column to be twice as big as the other columns, I would do 2 for the center column. That kind of thing. Although that doesn't seem to have updated. And then, oh geez. And then for responsive, since I'm just going from 3 side by side to 2 side by side, and then eventually down to 1 side by side, all I'm going to be doing is removing a fractional width in this setting, and then a smaller size, removing the last fractional width. That's all I do to make this responsive. But the one thing I need to find out is what size should I trigger this switch, what screen size. And so Builder today gives you defaults up here of like a portrait mobile, a landscape mobile, a tablet, a laptop size desktop, and then a large screen, call it ultra wide. My screen I'm on right now, well, actually the screen that you're viewing is in my whole screen. So this is probably, I don't actually know how wide this is. Let me see if I can find out. I mean, this is probably like 1400 something. It's probably that laptop size actually, or somewhere around there, 1440. So, so I know that at 1440, these three seem to fit. Now, if I had a really long word in the name, these actually wouldn't fit. But in this case, if I have, these are like good size cards, everything's good, 3 side by side makes sense. At this point, I might actually add a property to break the word. If a word is really this long, it can get broken in half. But it's very unlikely I'll even run into that situation. All I care about for now is that at this screen size, which is somewhere around the 1440, this screen size or bigger, these three fit. And so this 1440 laptop breakpoint, I'm on all right now, and I set it to this value. If I clicked on this 1440, it's gonna show me all my properties I have set, and then I can change this, and I get a little laptop icon, because on all devices it's 3 columns. On the laptop and below, which is just how media queries work, it's 2 side by side. So if the screen size is 1300 pixels, that's less than 1440, it'll be 2 side by side. And now I'm going to take it a step further, and I'll say when we get down to, I think maybe I'll do it, well, I'll check, but maybe I'll do a tablet. I would move this down to 1. But like this tablet size is 768. So the way that I can test this, if you inspect element, you can drag the screen here anywhere and it'll show you the screen width, but you can also select this device toolbar, and then you get a smaller editable thing here, and it shows you the width up here, or you can type it in. So in this case, that iPad or tablet size was like 768, I think, somewhere around here. And I can see that these are very close. This is almost going off the page. So I think at the 768 is where I'll make them break into 1 column. So for now I have 2 columns on this laptop size. I click on the tablet size. I move it down to 1. So all default biggest screen, 3 columns. Laptop and below, 2 columns. Tablet and below, 1 column. And so I don't know. I think this will be big enough to show 3. So 3. As soon as I inspect, it's going to take some of that width, so it'll probably jump to 2. 2, and I can't scroll sideways. And so 2, and then when I get a little shorter, 1. Now I can see this is actually butting up to the edge, which I don't want. I like padding. So I will actually probably have to make some considerations. In this case, the consideration I might actually make is, instead of making it go to 1 column sooner, I might just make this categories column a little shorter. But we'll see. I'll handle that later. For now, I got the base level done. So if I view this on a phone, well, right now I didn't change the categories. That's the other thing, is at some point I'm going to move these categories so it's not side by side. The categories will come in like a little toggle menu at the top, which I think I should show you on here. So here actually it looks like I went to 1 column much sooner. Like this is at 1000 pixels and it's already 1 column. But when I get small, the categories list jumps up to here, and then I can click this button and it slides out. That's a whole other thing, which we will make in Builder, but not right now, not today. But anyway, yeah, that's done. That level is done, which is essentially like the bare bones, so that it looks pretty good. It looks good here. It looks good here. And then there's more to style these. Like you can see the heights don't match. I'll handle maybe the break word or whatever that edge was over there. And then all of these need to get styled, especially this categories list. And they need to be conditional. So if I have an affiliate link, I'll show an affiliate link. If they have an endorsement, I'll say how many endorsements. If not, I'll say love this tool, endorse it. And like, here's an affiliate. So depending on what's in the card, we have to do some conditionals, and that's all done on this card page, but I'll do that on a different day. It's already, I've got like 7 minutes left in the hour, so it doesn't make sense probably to go into much more. But at least for now, we're in a pretty decent base level state where if I compare side by side, they're looking pretty similar. So real one, in progress one. And at some point, so right now I'm also copying directly. At some point, you know, if I get to this level in a site, I might just say, I don't need to copy the exact styles anymore. I'll just make some decisions because I'm looking at this. I don't know if I'm at that point yet. We'll see how I feel next time on Wednesday. But I think for now, that's looking pretty good. And I'll just wrap it up and pick up next week. I'll probably go right into the cards if I had to guess. That's like what I'm really feeling like I want to do. But I have some cool styling things coming up. We can style and set the conditionals on the cards. We can style these category, like this stuff where you hover over and it gets the plus, you select one and it gets the check or the X. I started doing those last week, but I was having a little trouble with the pseudo states where you're doing these befores and afters and they're kind of advanced. But I remembered the reason I have it set up that way. It's like kind of a CSS challenge. Sometimes I do my personal projects. Sometimes I do like really tricky CSS just to test myself. That's almost what those were. Those had a lot of like pseudo classes and hover pseudo classes and all this stuff. I realized that I did that partly because of challenge, partly because of how Ghost was set up and how I was building my theme. In Builder, I don't need to do that. In Builder, I have this page for the category row, and I have, you know, states and actions and all these things I can put on. So I'm actually going to rebuild this in a more Builder specific way, which will be easier to understand and easier to apply to your own stuff. So I think it'll be better. So I think designing cards is one, designing those states is another. And then at some point soon, I can design this menu up, which would include these drop downs. A couple of them have drop downs. So yeah, that's what's coming up. Thanks for watching. I'm going to end it now, and I'll be back on Wednesday, 1 p.m. Central Time, or it's 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So hopefully you can figure out your own time zone. Thanks for watching.